It's around 1 year since I got my Mavic Pro, and now it's time to do a 12-month DJI Mavic Pro review and share my honest opinion about 6 issues that you might experience with this highly advanced drone from DJI. These issues are not very often mentioned in other reviews, so stop watching if you
can't handle the truth.
If you stick with me to the end of this video, I will update my buying recommendation to tell you if the Mavic Pro is a buy or not, based on my experience from the last year. Let's dive right in after the intro. If you want to improve your drone footage, refine your video skills, or learn about e-wheels, the future of commuting, subscribe for weekly tips, tests and tutorials. Given the success of the Mavic line, it's likely that DJI will push a new Mavic 2 during 2018. They will partly do this to continue the growth, but possibly also to fix some of the issues in the original design. In this video, I'm addressing 6 issues that might influence your decision of buying the Mavic Pro or Platinum right now. Let's dive in. Digital sharpness changes with firmware. There are many tutorials with best recommendations for video settings for your Mavic Pro, including the one that I made here for the channel. They're all pretty fine for the basic understanding of how the interface works, but you can't really rely on them because DJI keeps changing what the values are doing. A good example is digital sharpness that has been discussed many times in many tutorials, and some prefer the setting of +1 and others prefer -1. I was convinced about the arguments using +1 for digital sharpness, but lately digital sharpness has introduced all sorts of strange artifacts around trees and grass areas. Another good example is the color profiles that DJI keeps changing all the time. So my point is not to trust the values from the tutorials, but use them as a starting point and start experimenting yourself. Sensor fails. The front-facing sensors are very sun sensitive. Experienced this a few times where Mavic was not successfully able to perform a return to home because of a low-hanging sun in the horizon. The landing was interrupted and the Mavic was just hanging up there with little or no control from the sticks. To me it seems the sun was interpreted as a big obstacle, and that's a quite big one. This can be super critical with low battery when it's forced to return home. At some point it will just land vertically to avoid dropping out of the sky, and if the landing spot is not appropriate you might end up losing or damaging your aircraft. Luckily there's a workaround. You just need to flick it in and out of sports mode to abort the return to home and land it manually. At some point my downward facing sensors lost calibrations and I needed to recalibrate them by using the DJI Assistant 2 app. I managed to make them work again. Gimbal overload warning. After around 7 to 8 months of use, my gimbal started malfunctioning, giving me gimbal overload warnings. This is pretty fatal because it prevents you from flying your Mavic. In my previous review, I got a lot of comments about rough handling of the drone that might have caused this issue because I showed a gimbal protection cover that was broken. These 2 small tabs that keeps the cover in place were broken off. I can tell you this is not the case, as I always carefully protect my Mavic in a protective case, and I never crashed it. So these things are completely unrelated. Because the wires inside the gimbal are very fragile, there's a chance that they might get damaged during normal use, leading to this kind of error. I mentioned this many times before, the gimbal is the weakest point of the Mavic Pro. DJI fixed mine under warranty without asking any questions. I do not really recommend that you try to fix it yourself. Firmware updates and breaking changes. The number of firmwares released by DJI is too much. It seems they're updating the firmware all the time. Of course we should be happy that they keep supporting an old product with new features and bug fixes. But this is simply too much. Sometimes you spend up to 30 minutes before you can get out flying. And if this happens very often, it's kind of annoying. On top of this, DJI has introduced a no-fly zone policy where the database needs to be updated all the time to keep the information relevant. No-fly zones are areas where you're not allowed to fly, and DJI implements this by preventing the aircraft from taking off. Further, the quality of the updates does not always seem on par. I've experienced a firmware update that actually broke the video link between the aircraft and the remote, rendering the flying experience completely useless. I'm not sure if they have done it yet, but I heard rumors that they will implement a way of preventing the firmware from being downgraded with the DJI Assistant 2 software. In that way, if you get a firmware that actually messes with your setup, you will not be able to fix it yourself until DJI releases another fix. My recommendation is always to check with other users what the experience is with the new firmware. You can do this either through the mavicpilot.com forum or through the Facebook groups. There are always somebody that's willing to take one for the team and try out the new software, including myself. Horizon issue, how to deal with DJI support. Those of you that has been following my channel knows that I've been struggling a lot with the horizon leveling issue and finally got it fixed. I just want to address the comments about how you just can fix it after takeoff in the DJI Go app by adjusting the horizon. That would be true if the issue was static, but in my case it was predominant to one side. It seems a lot of DJI products suffers from this, so it's not only the Mavic Pro. The good part is DJI can fix it, so you don't need to accept it. I don't want to go into further details about this issue, as this has been covered in a separate video, including how to approach DJI support. You can access this video by clicking this card. Real flight time. It seems there's a common perception that you get 27 minutes of flight time out of your DJI Mavic Pro. According to the DJI website, you should be able to get that in no wind condition at a constant velocity of 50 miles per hour. I've not been able to get anywhere close to these numbers because there's a lot of factors in play. That's why I decided to find out what is the real flight time is for a 1-year-old Mavic Pro. So keep an eye out for that video. I have earlier mentioned that the remote is actually the limiting factor for the total flight time, as the phone is actually draining the remote. Especially on older Android phones that seems to drain the battery pretty fast. In some cases I've seen a reduction up to 30 minutes in total flight time. I've made a video that actually shows you a workaround for this problem with an ordinary power bank and an extra micro USB cable. You can access the video by clicking the card here. What issues have you seen with your Mavic Pro or Platinum? If you already own one, let us know in the comment section below. I promised you an update on my buying recommendation, and I must say it's a tough call watching CES and seeing all the cool stuff that's coming out this year. I often feel that the picture quality and dynamic range could be better for the Mavic Pro, especially around trees and grass areas and other complex structures. On top of that, you need to mess around with the external ND filters to control the aperture. This has often made me wonder if I should upgrade to the Phantom 4 Pro for getting a better picture quality. By the end of the day, I decided not to upgrade because the portability beats all the Mavic Pro shortcomings. I really love the idea of just being able to bring the drone along in my backpack and pull it out when I need it. Would I spend the extra money to get a Platinum to get a few extra minutes of flight time? I'm not really sure, especially now where DJI offers refurbished Mavic Pros for around $799. In my opinion, the Platinum is only a marketing gimmick from DJI to fill in the gap until we can get the real Mavic 2. And if I want to extend the flight time, I would just pick up an additional battery. I would still recommend buying the original Mavic Pro because it offers tremendous value, and I wouldn't live without it, despite the issues I've been experiencing and the missing aperture control. In case you want to pick up a refurbished Mavic, I have for your convenience included a link in the description below. I mentioned aperture a few times, and in case you want to know how to control the aperture on your Mavic Pro, I made a tutorial about this that you can access through this card. I do want to mention that 2018 seems to be a really interesting year where competition finally is trying to keep up with DJI. I might have to do a separate video on this, as Autel Evo seems to be the first real competitor towards DJI Mavic Pro. Further, Valkyria has made a version called Piri, which is a Spark clone that actually has a 3-axis gimbal, being able to record 4K at only $499. So a lot of crazy stuff is coming out that I will monitor closely and keep you posted. If you found this video useful, then make sure to smack the like button below, because this really helps me understand if you find this kind of content useful. Thank you, and see you on the next one.